The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM. Studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6 o'clock.
Assalamu alaikum, you're listening to Inspire FM 105.1 FM. This is Friday Night Live. You're listening to me, Zaffar Iqbal. And this, again, is Friday Night Live, where we discuss topical issues which are pertinent to the Muslim community or which are relevant and of interest to the Muslim community, inshallah. So there's been lots happening in the last week or so since we spoke last week. We have a new Prime Minister for a start. We have a new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who's the new Prime Minister. Now, what does that mean? Boris has been a colourful character leading up to his election as a Prime Minister. Will he change? Will he change his colours? Will he be different? Will he be inclusive? Like is actually sort of mentioned in his speech, to say that he's going to have a cabinet which is representative of modern Britain. Does that include Muslims as well? Does it include Muslims? Now, one person who was critical of Boris Johnson during his election campaign has actually resigned from the Conservative Party. That was Muhammad Amin. I think he mentioned the fact that in his article, or the comments that he made, was that Boris Johnson is not morally fit to be Prime Minister, but he's the Prime Minister now. So we're going to have a conversation with Muhammad Amin. That's the person that we're talking about. He's the former chairman of the Muslim Conservative Forum. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad Amin.
Wa alaikum salam.
All right, welcome back. It's been a while since we had a conversation with yourself. I know at one point you used to be quite a regular on our show.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So you are no longer the chairman of the Conservative Muslim Forum.
Well, I was expelled from the Conservative Muslim Forum on the 20th of June.
Right.
After I gave an interview on the BBC Radio 4 Today programme.
Oh, yes, that's right.
14th of June, about my views about Mr. Johnson. And right. The Conservative Muslim Forum, my colleagues and Lord Sheikh, the president, came under enormous pressure from the party chairman,
right,
to get rid of me, and that's what they did.
Right. So you left the Conservative.
Well, I was expelled.
Right.
I didn't leave. I was asked to resign.
You resigned. You were kicked. You were kicked.
I'd done nothing wrong.
You were kicked out under duress, basically, right?
Yes.
For making your views clear about the party, and your views, I guess, were based on the fact that there were a number of people, a number of sort of conservative people associated with the Conservative Party who'd made very unkind comments about the Muslim community, and you raised your voices, and you got fired for that.
Well, to be precise, my view is that Mr. Johnson is morally unfit because I formed the view that he no longer cares about the difference between truth and falsehood. And secondly, he's willing to do or say anything that will advance his personal career, regardless of the harm it causes other people.
Right. Those
are two reasons why I feel he's morally unfit to be party leader. I couldn't serve in a party where he was the leader. I couldn't try to get him elected. And therefore, I have now resigned.
So you're no longer part of the Conservative Party? I
resigned on Tuesday, the day that the election result was announced.
Right, okay. So what does that mean? Will you continue to play a role in the, I guess, conservative circles, or is that it? You've actually sort of, effectively broken off right with the Conservative Party, and that's it?
Well, it's a difficult and complicated question. Remember, I've been a member of the Conservative Party for 36 years.
Yes.
I'm still a great believer in free market capitalism and the things that the Conservative Party itself stands for. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote, and I always vote tactically anyway because of our first-past-the-post voting system. I live in a constituency which is a safe Labour constituency in Manchester, and in London, where my flat is, it's a Labour Lib Dem sort of contested constituency, but the Conservative vote has never been anywhere in that constituency anyway. But
are you considering voting for Labour then?
It's an interesting question. Quite possibly. There's no point in my voting in Manchester Gorton, and because I live in two places, I can choose where I vote. It's against the law in the general election for me to vote in both constituencies.
Sure, yeah.
I can be on the electoral roll in both places, but I can only vote in one constituency, but I get to choose where I want to vote.
Sure.
And there's no point in voting in Manchester. It's a rock-solid, safe Labour seat. In the past, in Southwark, Bermondsey Old Southwark, I have voted Lib Dem because Simon Hughes, who used to be the Lib Dem MP, is somebody I know personally. I was very supportive of him, and I'm quite sympathetic to the Liberal Democrat Party anyway.
So,
however, what's interesting is that my Labour MP in Southwark, Neil Coyle MP, is a die-hard Remainer.
Right.
So I'm not sure how I'm going to vote if there's a general election.
So were you actually a Brexiteer then, were you? Or are you?
No, I'm a die-hard Remainer myself. I believe that since the age of 12, I believe in the European Union, or as it used to be called, the European Economic Community.
Yeah.
And I believe it's extremely harmful to the UK to leave the European Union.
So, to be honest, where does that leave you now? The fact that you I guess you're... does it strengthen your position, the fact that if you join another party, which is a Remain party, and therefore you can play a more positive role in another party, or are you still hark towards maybe a slight change in direction for the Conservative Party?
If I thought Mr. Johnson was going to be there as party leader for years and years and years, I would join another political party.
Right.
And most probably the Liberal Democrats, although I can't guarantee that, but that's the most likely one. And however, if I think he's only going to last sort of 6 months, then I don't see much point in joining the Liberal Democrats or any other party, because if Mr. Johnson ceases to be party leader, I may well rejoin the Conservative Party.
So, to be honest, do you think that he's going to last 6 months? Is there a possibility that maybe he have an election and get defeated?
I think there's every possibility he could crash and burn.
Right. Okay. And then the reasons for that being?
He is leading a party which the party as a whole is very supportive of Brexit.
Sure.
Overwhelmingly, but its MPs are not. They're divided. If he leads the party to defeat, I think that defeat will be totally associated with him personally. If you look at the government that he's organised right now, it's a hard leave government.
It is, yes. But Sajid Javid, I mean, was he not on the fence at one point? Is he not?
Sajid Javid, his position on the European Union is quite interesting. He's historically been a Eurosceptic.
Yeah.
In the referendum campaign where he was a government minister, he supported Remain, but with a certain amount of reluctance.
Okay.
Which I think is one reason he sort of survived into the Boris Johnson sort of government.
So I guess there are, a few people who are in the actual cabinet, at least anyway, who are at least doubters Brexit, at least anyway, if not Remainers.
Well, there are some people in the cabinet and in the government right now who voted Remain, but they've all had to sign up to Mr. Johnson's demand that they support leaving on 31 October, do or die. It's quite clear that every minister has had to agree to that as a condition of being in the government. Right.
Okay. Right. And then that's the bottom line as far as he's concerned. And all of these Remainers even probably bought into that. Then
they have to sign up to it, whether they like it or not. If you want to be in the government, and some people have chosen to walk away, and I admire them for walking away. But those who think it's more important to be in the government, they have had to sign up to that, whether in their heart of hearts they like the idea or not.
So let's turn to this Conservative Muslim Forum. To be honest, I think I guess you're the only person who brought a sense of the public awareness of it, at least anyway, if not nothing else. So minus you, it's not an organisation as such, is it?
The Conservative Muslim Forum.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair. Lord Sheikh was the founder of the Conservative Muslim Forum in 2005. He has quite a high personal profile himself, and he has now stepped in as its acting chairman. We have other people in the Conservative Muslim Forum who are now on the approved candidates list. And so I don't think it's right to say that I was the only person with a public profile. Obviously, I had more visibility as chairman than my colleagues did, and we'd agreed that I would be the guy that did the media interviews.
Sure.
Of course, Now that I'm not there, somebody else will have to do that.
But to be honest, I think if you looking back at the discussions we've had, there's no, apart from Islamophobia, right, which I guess campaigning sort of against Islamophobia and highlighting that within the Conservative Party, there's not a lot it does it?
Well, it's chosen deliberately not, first of all, not to take lots of policy positions. If you want to know, as a general principle, what the Conservative Muslim Forum thinks about something, if you look at the Conservative Party's official policy on that issue,
sure,
the Conservative Muslim Forum would support that. And there's nothing unreasonable about that. That's an organisation.
Yeah, I think we talked about this in the past as well. There's a lot of things that which are, I guess, of interest to Muslims, the Palestine issue, the Kashmir issue, all of the issues, right, which I think there is a bit of a voice required. This organisation chose to stay silent on.
Correct. And I was one of the people strongly behind that. I mean,
I know, and you visited Israel as well.
Yeah, and many years ago, somebody who was a passionate campaigner for Kashmiri independence got involved with the Conservative Muslim Forum, and he was trying to get us, the CMF, to take a position on Kashmir. And we categorically refused. The Kashmir issue is very contentious between India and Pakistan. The British government has its own position on the Kashmir dispute, which is, frankly, it stays well away from it. And there's no.
Well, that's not always been a case, though, is it? I mean, it's the position of the Conservative Party and the current regime, I guess, right, within the Conservative Party. But that's not always been a position, because I remember the days of Labour, they were actually quite for trying to find a resolution to Kashmir. And I think I'm trying to remember the name of the Foreign Secretary who actually visited India to try and start that discussion process.
Well, the government, even now, right, the government would undoubtedly like India and Pakistan to agree a resolution to the Kashmir dispute. But what the UK government is not going to do is to go out on a limb and take a position supporting one side or the other.
No, I agree. But I guess organizations like the Conservative Muslim Forum, right, at least they can shed some light. They can take an interest. And by looks of things, it tried to stay away from that as much as possible, didn't it?
Well, our own members will have different views on the Kashmir dispute, just as our members will have different views on Israel and Palestine. And I would much rather that our people individually speak up for whatever position they support or care about.
Okay, so let's move on to, I guess the next question is around, and this is I guess it's the second item of discussion, right, we have starting at 6:30, but you might like to comment on this, that Boris Johnson made a comment that he's got a cabinet, right, which reflects a modern Britain, which includes quite a few people of brown persuasion, at least anyway. In there, so is that genuine, or do you think it's just there's another reason for it?
It's extremely genuine. The Conservative Party has a long tradition of choosing people based on merit, and when I look at they've
obviously failed with Boris, haven't they?
Well, that's what they tried to choose on merit. They haven't chosen Boris because they think he's got blonde hair or because he's white. The people who voted for him because they think he's the best person to do the job.
Which obviously you obviously disagree with.
Yes, I disagree with the choice, but the point is that they have chosen on their perception of merit, not on their perception of race or religion.
Really? And you still have that position, even though there's quite a few people who made comments about Muslims.
Every candidate Boris Johnson was running against for the leadership was white. Sam Gyimah, who's of African origin, was trying to run but didn't get the nominations. So the idea that the Tory party's members chose a candidate rather than another candidate because of their race is nonsense. Every candidate was white anyway.
That's what I'm saying. I think the point I'm trying to make is that there is an attempt to try and be inclusive, right? But some of the comments that Boris has made, some of the comments that some of the other Conservative MPs and councillors have made in the past shows that their position on Muslims, at least anyway, are quite disturbing.
Well, let's come back to that precise issue first of all. And sticking with this point we'll come back to comments about the Islamophobic comments separately. I'm happy to talk about them, but let's not get sidetracked. Take it piece by piece.
Okay.
So you asked me about the ministers. The point I want you to understand is that the ministers are not there as tokens. Each of them is a person of high ability, strong educational background. They've had previous careers doing very high-powered jobs in many cases. And every one of these ministers is there because of their own individual merit, regardless of whether I agree with some of their politics or don't agree with some of their politics. So none of them is there as a token. And this government has more cabinet members from an ethnic minority background than any previous government. Indeed, there are more cabinet ministers today from an ethnic minority than all previous cabinet ministers from ethnic minorities for all governments put together.
So you agree with the fact that his cabinet is reflective of modern Britain, then?
Yeah.
But a lot of the people, I guess, to the Islamophobia question, there's a lot of people actually who are in the cabinet who have very, very disturbing views on Muslims and Islam. Now, how do you square that? They might have people of color there, but still there is that sense of not being very inclusive, in the sense that there is still the views held toward Muslims, right, which are disturbing.
Even there, let's take them bit by bit. Which person and which views?
Well, the man himself.
Okay, let's take that. I mean, because I've often been asked the question in the last few weeks. As you imagine, I've given lots of interviews.
Yeah,
I
sure.
think Boris Johnson is Islamophobic. And the answer I've given is no, but I think it's worse than that. I don't have any reason to believe that Boris Johnson is anti-Muslim or hates Muslims. However, he will write or do or say anything if it advances his career. So when he wrote his famous column in August of last year about the burqa and the niqab, he tried to have it every way. He started off by saying we shouldn't ban it. He then spent most of the column, or a big part of the column, mocking and deriding Muslim women who wear it, comparing them to letterboxes and bank robbers.
Yeah.
And he did that, in my view, because it would make him look more popular with the right wing of the Conservative Party. So he's furthering his ambition, even though it was obvious to anybody with half a brain that this article would lead to Muslim women in the streets being verbally abused or sometimes physically abused, which is exactly what happened. I don't think he wrote that article because he hates Muslim women. I think he wrote that article because he wanted to ruthlessly advance his own career, regardless of the damage that it might cause to Muslim women, but because he doesn't care about other people. That's why I think he's morally unfit. But that's not the same as saying I think Boris Johnson is anti-Muslim.
Right, but he's written articles, he's written a book, he's written a paper in which he says Islam is all sorts of different things in that book.
Yes, you're referring to a chapter which he wrote. It's an appendix to a history book of his. I read that whole appendix, the chapter, because a Guardian journalist sent it to me, and I read it all, then gave her a quote. I was quoted in the Guardian article that was on the front page about a week and a bit ago. And even that article, that book chapter, is Mr. Johnson trying to have it both ways. He spends most of the article criticizing Islam based upon actually very poor quality. He's only got one very poor quality source. It's a history book by a Frenchman written in the 1930s. And frankly, what he says about the history of Islam and the Middle East in that era, after the rise of Islam, is complete junk. It's simply wrong.
But the thing is, he's picked up on it.
Then switches in the second half of this chapter to saying, actually, Christians are pretty awful as well, and we should have Turkey joining the European Union, although in less colourful language. And the overall effect of the chapter, I think, is negative. If you were a white British non-Muslim person and you read that book chapter and you knew nothing else about the history of the Middle East, you would form a very negative view of Muslims. Sure.
And I think that was, you think he was playing to the gallery by writing that, to be honest. Okay, I think you made your points very well. Muhammad Amin, thank you very much for all the contributions that you made to Inspire FM in the past. And I'm sure if you do head up any other organization, we'll be in touch with you and we'll have a conversation. But for today, thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Right, listeners, I'm going to take a short break and we'll be back after these messages. Assalamu alaikum.
Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. You're listening to Inspire FM 105.1 FM. This is Friday Night Live. You're listening to me, Zaffar Iqbal, and we were talking about the new Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his colour for past and what he's going to do to the country, and in particular, I guess, what his views and his attitude is going to be towards the Muslims. And we had Muhammad Amin, he's the former chairman of the Conservative Muslim Forum, who was sacked for criticising Boris Johnson for not having, I think, something to do with moral authority, something along those lines. I don't want to quote him 100%. And he was sacked from the Conservative Muslim Forum. And that organisation apparently continues. Not sure what it does, but it carries on. And Muhammad Amin assures me that it does a lot. And I'll take his word for it. Inshallah. Okay, right. We're going to move on to, I guess, a related topic, but slightly different. And we're going to talk about Sajid Javid's appointment as a chancellor. Picking up on the conversation we were having earlier on, was that there are, and this is a fact, there are quite a few people of minority, blacks, Asians, etc., within the cabinet, more so than previously. And I have seen a few sort of, messages on WhatsApp, etc., pointing out that, more people of ethnic minority have been promoted, I guess, to the cabinet than Labour Party, pointing that out to Jeremy Corbyn. What does that mean? What does it mean? Does Sajid Javid being appointed as a chancellor? I mean, it's a high-profile position. It's a very high-profile position. It's a very important position. Very important promotion, I guess, for Sajid Javid. And I guess from a Muslim's perspective or a Pakistani's perspective, depending on what he categorizes himself as, and I think that's we will start there first of all. What do you think he is it right to categorize oneself? Is it right to sort of put a label on? I think he's tried very hard to stop a label being put on him, but there's a lot of people that actually define a label on him. I'm going to have a conversation with Basit Mahmood. He's a journalist for the Metro, and I'm going to put that question to him. Let's start first of all. I guess Sajid Javid, as Muhammad Amin said, he's been appointed because of his caliber, his qualities, his qualifications, etc. But the fact that he's a person of color, there is obviously going to be a label on him. Is it right to label him? Is it right to sort of say, yeah, he's a Pakistani, he's a Muslim, he's, I don't know, whatever he is? Is it right to describe him like that or not? The fact that he's doing a job and that's it, he's a chancellor.
Well, I think the way Sajid, whether he likes it or not, he's going to get portrayed like that anyway. Because irrespective of whether he says, I am Muslim or I'm not Muslim, that's his choice. The Conservative Party have always been keen to portray him as the first Muslim Home Secretary and now the first Muslim Chancellor. Yeah. So he's obviously kind of battled against. I mean, I would not. This whole debate about him and Priti Patel and Alok Shah, there's been a number of people of colour, right, so appointed in this cabinet. And I think the debate that I've been looking at the moment says it goes either the way of yes, they are fully representative and it is a good thing, or no, they're bloody not. And it can be a kind of middle ground of yeah, it's good you've got a black or minority ethnic person in the cabinet who happens to this point be of a Muslim background for Sajid's perspective. But at the same time, you've got to also remember that. It's not just, you can have a diverse system, but it can still be unequal.
Yes.
You could have, just because you have Hillary Clinton or Theresa May as leaders of the country, Hillary Clinton, if she had won, it doesn't mean misogyny, for example, and sexism are completely out of society. So just because Sajid Javid's the chancellor doesn't mean Islamophobia is going to stop. Doesn't mean, I think, we'll get on to this, there's a kind of wider discussion of, yes, they're there, but the journey that took them there. That if Sajid's there, the message it might send to a young Pakistani Muslim son of another bus driver might be that, yeah, I can get there. But at the same time... How did you get there?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point you make. So I think let's just still sort of stay on the point of the label. He's going to be labelled as a Muslim. He's going to be labelled as a Pakistani person of colour, etc. Because that's how the Conservative Party want to portray him, actually. Whether he's not or not is a different matter. And he himself, on many occasions, have kind of, I guess, straddled all lines. He made a quote to say, well, the only religion that's in my household is Christianity. That's the way he answered the question one time. other occasions, he's, in the elections campaign, he called for an investigation into Islamophobia. I talk about, within the Conservative Party. And I think I've seen another video clip where he actually talks effectively on behalf of the Muslim community. He says, like, Muslim community X, Y, and Z, of which I'm a member. So the question actually is he, I guess in his own right, he's a role model, but is he a role model? Is he representing Muslims, or it's him, but he just happens to be a Muslim, really? And
I think it's him, and he happens to be a Muslim.
Right.
Because the thing is, I don't ever agree that anyone can ever represent an entire community.
Sure, yeah.
You'll have gender imbalances, you have different viewpoints, you have different cultural beliefs, you have different religious beliefs. You could be a Sunni or a Shia or whatever. So I think that's one thing. The other thing, what I'm worried about, and what I think a lot of British Muslims are worried about, religious or non-religious, is that there's a form of moral licensing happening where you can say, I've got a person from such and such a background. And therefore, if that person's passing that policy, let's take the citizenship deprivations, which a lot of people have strong opinions on. People might think, well, you can't call it racist because the Home Secretary is a person of colour and he's passing this law. Well, you still can. It's a form of kind of moral licensing, and that's the most worrying part. And this has been done. If you look at, there's a reason why people like Nigel Farage had hired Raheem Kassam. People forget that Raheem Kassam is a person of colour, but he's one of the most right-wing people.
Most toxic person you could
find. So I don't think, is there a deliberate strategy in play there where he's appointed Raheem Kassam? Steve Bannon's worked with Raheem Kassam. These guys have actively, in some sense, even though, and the policies they advance are designed to exclude. Steve Bannon's Nigel Farage has been described as Islamophobic by some people, that basically the policies they bring about exclude. But then they always point to the fact that, but we've got such and such.
Can't be.
Yeah.
So I think just similar to the responses, right, that we got during the election campaign when the Imam asked the question about Islamophobia effectively, and I think the response was, my grandfather was a Muslim, so therefore
that's a form of moral licensing.
My children are half Chinese, so therefore I'm not.
Which you can. I mean, racism isn't just about Islamophobia; isn't just a personal; it's a structural problem as well, and there's structural forces at play. That basically, Sajid, what his religious beliefs are, that's his choice. But at the same time, the moral licensing, whether he likes it or not, that's going to happen. So he has to kind of look at that. He might say that I'm not religious or whatever, but the Conservative Party continuously refer to him as the first kind of Muslim Home Secretary.
So what's the impact of that, do you think, right, on the community itself then? They see somebody, if they don't know what he's like, I think a lot of people know what he's like. They don't know what he's like. They see him, they see a Muslim name, they see a person, right, who kind of like they can relate to. What message do they take from him, and how does that help or hinder the community, I guess?
I think it's a bit of both, because this is the thing is when I was saying I saw the messages earlier on, some people saying, no, he completely doesn't represent me. At the end of the day, Sajid Javid no longer, and he's spoken about this, was referred to as Paki growing up. He had that racism, and no one can ever take that away from him. He had to deal with that. So he obviously has a perspective in that cabinet that others don't. But I think the impact that it has on people in Luton is, one, they might start, from what I've heard from young people in my generation, they probably think, well, do I have to be right-wing to get to the top? Do I have to subscribe to dominant ideologies to get to the top? I can't dissent. And the other thing with Sajid specifically is you've got to remember that the policies he's enacted have alienated, it's fair to say, a large percentage of British Muslims. So, and also class is also, it's not just about race. If your Pakistani communities are more likely to be from working class backgrounds, as with other BAME communities, if this was a guy, and let's be honest, not everyone could be a millionaire banker. And then all of a sudden go into politics, so and be a Thatcherite at university. So
the other question is, do you think he's going to bat for Muslims? He's going to put the Islamophobia case forward?
But you know what? I think putting a cynic's hat on here, Saeed Abbas said to Sajid Javid, you could be religious or irreligious, but you might be slightly. So the Conservative Party membership, according to Hope Not Hate, produced that report that came out with views that over half believe this Sharia goes on and all this. So certainly for the membership of the party, for some, he had that label of being Muslim anyway. So I think then what happened was he had no choice but to come out and say, and I applaud him for that. I think it's a good thing. But I think he also realised that he was getting, take the Trump state banquet. He didn't get invited to that. So he was
So it's quite clear what people of that persuasion, the right wing persuasion, think of him. They don't care whether he's kind of like a Muslim, practicing Muslim, Muslim by name, whatever we want to say to him. As far as they're concerned, there's a Muslim, full stop, end of the day. And then, like you say, Shia, Sunni, whatever. They're Muslim. That's it. Therefore, it's in the opposite camp. And that was a big slap, I would have thought. It was a big slap in his face, and he just didn't react to it. He just said, "Oh, maybe he forgot," or something like that, or something silly like that.
No, because Muslimness is now it's a permanent feature, right? This is why it's been racialized. It's no longer about religion; it's been racialized, and he's got that Muslim label. How he deals with that now is either by continuing to push for that Islamophobia inquiry, which would be interesting to see if he does, because Boris Johnson promised and then downgraded it to a general inquiry, which I think again just disheartened Muslims. I don't think most Muslims believed that it would happen.
It's a bit like Trump and him saying that he's going to resolve the Kashmir sort of thing. It's like I don't think people actually sort of believed him. But so you think he's going to fight the corner? Or you're not. You don't think he's going to fight the corner, then, Mr.
I don't. I mean, the thing is, I think he will, giving his most latest pronouncement on it by pushing for the Islamophobia and getting all of them to nod their heads in that debate. Some of them reluctantly to basically nod their heads in that debate, saying that I'm going to bat for it. It'll be interesting because certainly he changed his position during the leadership contest.
But he did. But to be honest, he was a Home Secretary. He was in an ideal place to deal with it at that time, and he didn't. He didn't. And he brought it up during the election campaign. Yeah.
Well, I think he might still try and portray it as, if I'm totally honest, because what I'm saying is that the leadership campaign may have changed his thoughts on some things, which clearly it did when Michel Hussein asked him, "Why do you think you never got invited to the banquet?" He said, "I don't know," but it's clear that. It was suggested that the reason was because he was from a Muslim background by a lot of people. So I think when those incidents happened to him, thought maybe he does think that, I've got to come out and bat against this because I suffer from the same discrimination. It's like, for example, right, I'll give you an example. Members of the Sikh community, when they get attacked on the streets, which some of them do for being perceived to be Muslim, they turn around and say, well, and it was a really powerful message. The answer isn't to say I'm not Muslim, because then that makes it sound as though it's okay to do it to a Muslim. They could turn around and say, but I'm not Muslim, why are you attacking me? The same way in which a Jewish philosopher, Hannah Arendt, said that if you're attacked as a Jew, you defend yourself as a Jew. Meaning that, that you either, because if you don't, you throw other people under the bus. And I hope he comes to that conclusion that basically if you're attacked as a Muslim, you defend yourself as a Muslim. You don't say, oh, but I'm not this X, Y, and Z, which makes it seem as though it's okay to do it to another person.
So I actually, to be honest, I think if you're 100% sort of fair, getting to that position of being appointed a chancellor is no small thing, no small achievement. And I think that is an inspiration, I guess, some people draw from that, wouldn't it? From the
I mean, as British Pakistanis, the report came out 3 weeks with the lowest paid when it comes to ONS. We suffer a lot of discrimination in the jobs market, but British, Bangladesh and Pakistan. So he's obviously had to contend that barrier. I don't take anything away from him. The question of Islamophobia, though, that's a kind of complete. That's more class focused. Whereas when it comes to Islamophobia, that's more him and the role he plays. You can't really change your class or where you kind of come from or your race, but how you respond to Islamophobia is now in his court. And I just hope he does it in a positive way. But my big fear, like I said, is that I don't want certain policies or ideas to become legitimized. The idea that you could call Muslim women bank robbers and letterboxes, and then Hope Not Hate again recorded a specific within that week hate crimes against Muslim women going up, and then him turn around and say, but I can't be Islamophobic because I've got a Muslim chancellor.
What would the Muslim chancellor say on that happens, to be honest?
And that's the question.
But I mean, before you came along, Muhammad Amin was saying that he and I'm talking about Boris Johnson, he will say things just to get the desired effect. It doesn't matter what he believes or doesn't believe. And Amin's position was that he doesn't think Boris Johnson is Islamophobic, but he's quite happy to play along with it. And that's disturbing in a sense, really, because I think what you're saying is that it's okay to do that as long as he gets the results at the end of the day.
Yeah, which is what, and the conversation I've had with Muhammad Amin previously about this is that in many ways it's worse, because it's terrible that people are Islamophobic, yet some of them do it out of a false belief or conviction in a false ideology, which at least you can have a debate. But with Boris, it seems though he's willing to switch his position. It was not just with Islamophobia. 1 minute he was for leave, the next minute he was for remain, then he kept flip-flopping. And that's worse, because that just shows that the only person that matters is the career and the ambition, and you're willing that you see this community as a form of capital.
Yeah, that you can use
to increase your electoral advantage. I think he's taken that. He met up with Steve Bannon. That's a fact. and Steve Bannon's far-right parties across Europe, who have come to the conclusion that if you bash Muslims, it's a vote winner. They were seen as a capital in the world of politics, which...
That's an interesting point you actually raised, yeah, because, and I think it's an interesting point that Momin Amin raises as well. A lot of these people who are very pro-Brexit, etc., they have deliberately chosen this platform of Islamophobia in order to achieve the Brexit objective. The objective isn't necessarily to actually be Islamophobic, but it's a means to an end, right? And they're willing to sort of step over Muslims in order to sort of achieve that, and that's quite a disturbing sort of view.
And it's happened to other communities, whether it was the Jewish community before, where they're looking for someone to blame on the economic downturn. It just so happens it's Muslims. And Turkey, the whole example of Turkey, Muslims joining Europe, which is how it's portrayed, and hordes of Muslims coming over, refugees.
It was actually Boris Johnson who actually did that. Yeah. And he has Turkish Turkish roots, I guess. I think his great-grandfather was Turk.
Well, his cousins in the Turkish village today I wrote about, they've asked him to come over to visit.
Right. Okay. Yes. So maybe that will sort of convince him to tone down his Islamophobic sort of comments that he's made, at least anyway. Whether he's Islamophobic or not, I think we can't judge. But some of his actions point towards that way, at least anyway. Right. And it does sound a bit odd, right? The fact that somebody who's got even an arm's length connection with Islam and Muslims can be quite blatant and write about Islam in those sort of disparaging ways, but that's where we are. So do you think? I guess now that we're heading towards Brexit and Brexit happens and Britain's out of Europe, etc. Do you think if it was a case of Islamophobia being used as a stepping stone to achieve that objective, past October things will die down? The fact that they'll or is this a separate industry that's been created as a byproduct?
I mean, there's a brilliant book by Nathan Lee called The Islamophobia Industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar. There's so many facets to Islamophobia. It's not just about women's scarves being pulled off on the streets, Muslim women getting attacked, and men getting attacked. There's financial interest behind it.
Absolutely.
And people don't really look at that. Tommy Robinson was being funded by the Middle East Forum all the way in America. The other Pamela Gella, is it? She's made millions out of this industry. And Tommy Robinson, there's in the Spectator article where he was saying, where else am I going to get £4,000 a month from? So sometimes some of these guys don't even believe what they're saying, they're just doing it for the money.
The paid campaigners, they're professional campaigners.
But on your question of is it going to continue? Yeah, of course. Because at the end of the day, Islamophobia so Edward Said, and they used to talk about Orientalism, the way the Middle East was viewed, even before 9/11, that these are barbaric, backward people and all of this. And then after that, it got worse. And steadily it's got worse. This has been growing. It's structural, right? And it's not going to go away just because the Brexit vote's been won. We're still going to be, what I feel, the kind of community you can whip to basically, for a lot of society's ills, or the integration of debate that's been going on from Dame Louise Casey.
So there'll be a next challenge, you reckon? There'll be a next challenge, right? Which will use this platform to actually progress their objective. Yeah, because if you look at, let's just say something happens, there's another economic recession after Brexit, which has been predicted. We know that when there's an economic downturn, people look for scapegoats to blame, and somehow the Muslim community is going to end up getting blamed for lots of things. I'm just going to sort of recant or a comment that somebody made to me many years ago. So this is probably beyond your time, the 80s. As you might right, I mean, I grew up right in the National Front days and extremists and thugs and Paki bashing and those days, and I felt it and I kind of experienced it as well. And I was having a conversation with somebody, and I think this is when Thatcher was elected, basically, right, in I think early 90s, early 80s. The comment that this person made was that fact that things are going to calm down now because the money that was trickling down to the bother boys, right, is now going to dry up because they've achieved their objective. They managed to get a government, right, which has that kind of view basically towards ethnic minorities and immigrants and whatever. Do you think that's the case as well now? The fact that you've got now somebody who's got this extreme Brexit sort of viewpoint, somebody who's got, allegedly at least anywhere, Islamophobic viewpoint. Now that he's in power, some of those who actually use Islamophobia as a stepping stone are going to find that the money's going to dry up a little bit because they've achieved their objective.
No, because again, I think Islamophobia, there's just kind of been this idea that's been pushed, the clash of civilizations theory.
But the money might dry up because the objective has been achieved. Would you say?
Not really. I think basically the policing of Muslim communities, the way counter-extremism programs work, do you think that started before Brexit? That's going to continue after Brexit. You know, when legitimate dissent, whether it be criticism of state policies, it could be anything, foreign policy, domestic policy, when that's seen as policed through the lens of counter-terrorism, when you've got so much talent within Muslim communities when it comes to football or the creative arts or industry, and then the only way the government can relate to Muslim communities for that is through counter-extremism programs. And people find out it's got prevent funding and they want nothing to do with it. I think that whole nexus is going to continue. You know, there's a book, What is Islamophobia? That was written by a number of academics that basically it's not just about this idea of Islamophobia seen as approach from the top down, but it's also kind of bottom up, what's happening at the grassroots. It's not just about government, it's also about, you know, in the film industry. You know, are they going to carry on making movies or shows like Bodyguard, where basically people get entertained of the idea that Muslims are barbaric, and you know they're making money out of this idea that we're under attack from a particular community. That kind of whole industry, I don't think that's going to stop. But the money for that is still going to continue, I think.
Right. Okay. So you don't think this is a phase? Okay. Let's go back to Sajid Javid again. I think we're talking about him in particular. I guess him being appointed as a chancellor. I guess you know he's not brought his family into the limelight, and he's not brought. I guess what has come to the limelight is that he's an ardent supporter of Israel, and he before his appointment as a chancellor last week, and during just past his departure from the leadership race, he went to the Holy Land and also Israel as well, and they met with Netanyahu and etc. How much of that do you reckon, right, has actually helped him propel up the ladder? The fact that there is a powerful lobby that's kind of supporting him.
What I don't support is the idea that Israel's got a powerful lobby, because I think that does link into anti-Semitic tropes that Jewish people exert a lot of influence or power, and that's been going on for centuries.
But there was an Al Jazeera documentary which said there were people who were trying to influence the British.
I basically, the way I see it is when the UN have condemned Israeli illegal settlements, when human rights groups have condemned illegal Israeli settlements, and they've accused them of human rights violations. I think he came out with a specific statement, which kind of struck me, was that basically, you know, it was one of the greatest democracies in the world for children to grow up in, not by the UN standards, not by human rights standards.
Yeah.
So I think what Sajid, what he's trying to, I mean, I don't want to think too much about what he thinks, but it's clear that in his opinion, the way he's trying to get everybody on board, right? And I remember there was a quote even I read growing up, a religious quote that said, if you please everybody, you're a hypocrite. You can't, because different people are pleased by different things. And Sajid,
so is that what he's trying to do? He's trying to please different people. So why hasn't he come out, right, and openly and said, right, white Muslims, you're my community, right, and I'm gonna sort of back for you, and I'm gonna why has he not done that? Why has he not come to the Muslim community and visited a few mosques, right, and said, did whatever he did, I guess, in Israel?
There's a point was going out of my mind. I mean, he has visited mosques, but at the same time, I think what he's done is, if you look, for example, on where a grooming gang or a paedophile has been arrested and sentenced, right, and that's disgusting, and they've been sentenced. He chose, right, that was his choice, and this is essentially, he chose to specifically mention the race of the offenders when they were Asian. And it wasn't a lot of white people came out, a lot of BME people came out and said, why haven't you never mentioned the race of others? So I think what's happening in Sajid, and again, in the world of politics, like you mentioned earlier on Boris Johnson, this Machiavellian approach that basically is all about electoral, you're thinking electorally in your head, right? That you're thinking,
which is going to win
what's going to mean, yeah. And let's be honest,
and that's not a good, because I remember growing up and politicians used to be about substance, right? And I'm not saying they were the good old days, but at least you knew where the politicians stood. If they were kind of like socialist, right, you knew they were socialist, right, because they had a particular viewpoint and that. Now you're getting a politician, right, which is saying, well, before I open my mouth, which is going to get me the most votes, and I'll basically jump on that particular bandwagon.
Yeah, because we're living in a populist era.
Populist era.
And that's what they'll do, right? Because principles go out the window. Because the hardest part in these times is to stick to certain principles and say, no, you know what? If it does cost me electoral victory, then fine, I'm going to stick on this principle. And I think people still respect that. But unfortunately, in this filter bubble world where people just see their news mostly on Facebook, basically, thinking in your head, well, what's going to get me more votes?
It's a transactional relationship now.
Because it's campaign against Sadiq Khan. I mean, again, this was Boris, obviously, okay, he left, and then Zach Goldsmith came along. The campaign he ran.
Can't believe what he said.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, that was all about trying to scare people.
Anyway, Jazakallah, thank you very much, Basit, for coming along today and then having a decent discussion on Sajid Javid and his, role as a role model, I guess I would say. Jazakallah, thank you very much. We're going to move on to another topic after this short break.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. You're listening to Inspire FM 105.1 FM. This is Friday Night Live. You're listening to me, Zaffar Iqbal, and we were talking about the appointment of Sajid Javid as a Chancellor. What does that mean for Muslims? What does that mean for diversity and inclusivity? And I think there's been mixed messages. There were actually mixed kind of views, I guess. Basit, a journalist from the Metro, has given his views in the sense that the messages he sends are complex, at least anyway. Whether he's a role model for the Muslims, whether he'll stick up for the Muslims, whether he's in it for himself, we don't know. We don't know. And I think one thing that perhaps came out in the discussion is that a lot of politicians, I guess, including Sajid Javid, they would say things and do things which will basically make them progress up the political and electoral agenda rather than necessarily having a particularly sort of a position on an issue. Right. Okay. So we're going to move on to our next topic of discussion. We know we've kind of talked about America and Donald Trump as having a particular view again about Muslims, but this week he basically entertained a leader of the Muslim world who's quite respected, I guess, in many quarters. He's a famous cricketer, Imran Khan. He's now the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And he went there for 3 days. And he met with Donald Trump. And apparently they had quite a warm discussion. Warm sort of a discussion in which quite a few items of discussion were talked about, including the fact that Trump was quite prepared to mediate between India and Pakistan over the Kashmir issue, which India denied immediately. But I guess all of this media attention he got, and I guess from many Pakistanis' point of view, the welcome he got in America was good. Not only from the Pakistanis there, I think he was greeted by something like 3,000 people, right, in a stadium where he made a number of speeches, etc. But also, I guess, across the spectrum from the political structure of the American society, he was basically welcomed and had discussions and press sort of conferences with a lot of these. But that overlooked the fundamental question: is that if the premise is that Donald Trump is racist and Islamophobic, and leading up to his visit, he was entangled in an exchange with, a Muslim, at least anyway, in a group of ethnic minority sort of representatives in the Congress. However, all of that disappeared when Imran Khan walked in. So what was going on? Should Imran Khan have gone to America? Should he have actually met with Donald Trump? I've still got Basit Mahmood, who's a journalist from the Metro, here with me. Basit, what's your thought? Should he have gone? And if not, why not?
No, 100% no. And the thing is, people, you know what? So the way the discussion has happened is that, oh, you don't understand, this is the world of politics. Even when young Muslim friends are saying, you know, he has to have gone, you don't understand, this is politics. I get that part, right? But I think history will judge those. History will look very unkindly on those who dealt with a man who's racist, openly racist, and one of the stupidest leaders the world's ever seen, in the sense that Imran Khan went, and I think there's a pattern of behavior here where it didn't surprise me Imran Khan went. Some people were shocked, oh, Imran Khan went to Donald Trump. No, not really, because if you look at his answers they gave about the Uyghur Muslims in China, and he was asked, I can't remember who it was, a CNN or BBC, that basically they asked him, what about the Uyghur Muslims in China? You've got this CPEC happening. And again, we were talking earlier on about politics and principles and electioneering, that basically CPEC, and he said, I don't know about the Uyghurs. How can you say you don't know when it's happening on your doorstep? China is right near you, and you don't know what's happening to the Uyghur Muslims. So I think, so it didn't surprise me. So having said that, then he went to Donald Trump and met up with Donald Trump. So he's happy, he's trying to keep China on side. Then he went to see Donald Trump, and yeah, definitely, you can't. How can you meet someone who's openly attacking Ilhan Omar? Do you think that issue, I mean, that's not an isolated issue, where a black Muslim woman, we haven't even reached the fact that there's racism within aspects of Muslim communities against black people. And what happened was a black Muslim woman who's being attacked relentlessly by this man. It's not coincidence he's targeted her and Sadiq Khan most. And he turns out and says, you know, she's married to her brother and she's Al-Qaeda and all of this. And Imran Khan goes over there and meets him. Why? Like, I get that, you know, his whole campaign pledge was, we don't need nobody, we don't need nobody's aid. You know, we're going to stand on our own 2 feet. And you still went there. For what? And look at the way he greeted him. He spoke, I could kill X amount of millions of Afghans if I wanted to, but I don't really want to kill people. Who makes that kind of comment?
But the thing is, if you look at the position of Pakistan, it's not exactly in a position to kind of command a different viewpoint, though, is it? It's kind of struggling along. It's in a difficult position as far as the economy is concerned. So it's really a question of, why here's a set of priorities. My first priority is to get my house in order. I'll think about the global position, the global Muslim position later. Isn't that a justification?
No, I think the two are inextricably linked. When you're thinking about your house in order, your house has been burnt to the ground by the guy you're trying to, you know, Trump accused Pakistan of playing a double game, even though people usually seem to forget this inconvenient fact for them, which is that Pakistan's paid one of the highest prices when it comes to the fight on terror. We lost one of the biggest massacres of school children, you know, in the Peshawar school attack. You know, we've lost thousands of civilians to suicide bombings, and then on top of that, the drone strikes as well. You know, people make this contrast between Malala and there was other school children that were killed, and Obama's drone strikes. So when that happened, what about those girls whose schools were bombed, who can't go to school anymore, who've lost their parents?
But these things happen during the tenure of the previous administration, and I think our leaders were quite happy to meet Obama. But why a difference? Because he's the head of a country, really. He's the president of the United States, right? And if you want things done, you have to deal with him.
Yeah, there's one thing meeting him bilateral when there's a UN meeting happening or something. It's quite another going there and basically playing lapdog, which
that's a strong playing a lapdog. That's a good one. So I'm going to welcome Ali Mustafa. He's presenter for the Straight Talk on TRT World. Assalamu alaikum, Ali Mustafa.
Wa alaikum salam.
Shukriya, Jazakallah for joining me today. We're talking today about Imran Khan's visit to the United States. I've got with me Basit Mahmood, who's a journalist who writes for the Metro. And he was basically expressing his view that Imran Khan shouldn't have gone to America because he actually shook hands with somebody who's Islamophobe, somebody who's racist. What's your view?
Well, there is definitely that Imran Khan's visit to the United States comes at a time when Donald Trump is, for all intents and purposes, a bigoted racist going after women of color, for example, in the U.S. Congress. But on the other hand, keeping in view the context of Pakistan's traditional transactional relationship with the United States, these things at that level shouldn't really matter. You're talking about Donald Trump as being a bigot. Barack Obama in his final year of his presidency, dropped 29,000 bombs. According to the Pentagon's own assessment, one bomb killed 3 individuals.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 90,000, 99,000 people that were killed in Obama's final year of his presidency. So these things are semantics. The way politics and international relations work, well, you have to meet people that you don't necessarily see eye to eye with.
So I think you're talking about it from a diplomatic perspective, that there are occasions when you have to meet nasty people, and I guess that probably was the case during Hitler as well. I think he met Chamberlain, didn't he? Met with Chamberlain and had a discussion with him. I think history judged him afterwards, but during that time he did stretch a hand out.
Well, you've got other examples as well. You've got Mao Zedong, Nixon going to China to meet Mao Zedong, a man who, by some estimates, was responsible for the deaths of 45 million people.
Well,
but pulling back to Pakistan and Imran Khan, and you have to look at it in terms of where Pakistan is at this current point in time. There are a lot of similarities, actually, if you pull back and look at what was happening in the late 80s with Afghanistan, Pakistan, the United States, and the Soviets, to what's happening in Afghanistan today. I feel, from my limited analysis, that the United States and Pakistan are at the same crossroads today in 2019 as they were on the eve of the Soviet withdrawal. And as that event unleashed horrors in Afghanistan, so too does this event have potential with the withdrawal of the Americans.
Okay, what are you alluding to?
Well, once the Soviets left Afghanistan, the various factions in Afghanistan, most of whom were backed by the Pakistani military establishment, got down to a civil war.
So you think
talking about? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so what you're saying basically is that a withdrawal now of American troops from there is going to lead Afghanistan into an abyss, as it did after the Soviet withdrawal. But the things, I think Pakistan is trying, I guess, isn't it, to make this withdrawal a little bit more orderly. So having an engagement, right, with the different parties, and I think Russia has been involved in the discussions, China has, and I guess in some respect, I think Iran has been taken on board as well. So I guess that's the case. But what, going back to the visit to the US, do you think that this particular visit would have actually in some ways bettered that situation?
In terms of pure optics, yes. One can make an argument that in terms of pure optics, Trump meeting Imran, the kind of conversation that ensued, the reaction from India, the comments that were made on Afghanistan, yes. In a zero-sum game, purely based on optics, this was a successful visit, or can be construed in terms of a successful visit. But if you're looking at the broader context, what are they trying to achieve? They're trying to achieve an end to the longest running war that the Americans have ever fought. It's even longer than the Spanish war, the U.S.-Spanish war. You're talking about Pakistan, which is in a very precarious situation economically. A Pakistan which has been increasingly isolated for this visit by Imran Khan to the White House. So there is a desperate urge in Pakistan to find some sort of relevance again. And with this visit by Imran Khan to the White House, they see an opening. What this opening amounts to, well, that comes down to Mr. Trump's personality and his ability to keep to his word.
Sure. Okay, so Basit, I think you're shaking your head there. No, you disagree.
No, I totally disagree. Because the thing is, okay, I mean, North Korea saw an opening. Lots of countries have seen an opening with Trump, and nothing's really come of it, firstly. And secondly, you mentioned optics, and I think that's a key word, right? If you're saying for the purposes of just symbolism, the purposes of just for theatre, this was a good visit. Oh my God, look. I mean, Kim Jong-un done the same thing. Oh my God, look, I met Trump. For me, it's a massive win. I got him to the negotiating table. Imran Khan goes over, we're negotiating with America. You mentioned the 1980s, right? Why is it that you mentioned the precarious situation Pakistan finds itself in? The reason why Pakistan finds itself in that precarious situation is because for decades it's relied on America. The IMF, for example, these institutions that are global, The IMF is as strong as America. It's basically backed and funded by the American government. And the truth is, you're taking out IMF loans after IMF loans. So you're saying we're in the 1980s. I totally agree. It's similar because overall the structural thing hasn't changed because we're still relying on America, which isn't a fair with a friend. 1 minute Pakistan's with them on the war on terror, and the next minute Pakistan's been accused of playing a double-sided game. Pakistan's also paying the heaviest of prices in the region. And can I just say, you mentioned Obama. Of course, look, Obama deported more people than any present in American history. Now, that doesn't mean to say just because I criticize Trump, I'm pro-Obama. The thing is, though, with Obama, he didn't refer to countries, and excuse my language, as shithole countries. He didn't turn around and say, I want to put specifically in the words Muslim ban. You talked about symbolism. That symbolism matters too. He talks about a Muslim ban. He speaks about shithole countries. He targets innocent people in Congress saying that they're linked to Al-Qaeda. So if you think you're going to get anything from Trump, Trump's a businessman, right? Business and politics are two very separate things. You have to compromise in the world of politics. Trump, there's a brilliant book by Naomi Klein, that's called Shock Doctrine and No Logo, that basically he sees this all as a business transaction. You can't see the Kashmir issue as a business transaction. And I think, like Zaffar was saying, I think history will judge very unkindly leaders that went and batted for Trump and then made him to be some sort of impartial. Do you really think it's going to be, you said, India. Do you really think he's going to be an impartial media between two countries when already he's talking about Muslim bans and he's talking about shithole countries, and you think he's going to be an impartial media?
I think we have to be careful with using that term, to be honest. I'm not sure we can say that on the air. But anyway, I've also got basically a representative of the PTI, Asad Mahmood. He's a regular sort of, I guess, a correspondent, I guess, on the show. Asad, you heard the comments. It was a mistake. He shouldn't have gone to America. Why should he not have gone, from your point of view?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I actually disagree with that. Why he shouldn't have gone. I think it's the other way around. Why he should have gone.
Okay.
So this basically, the party looks at it in 4 different ways. So number one, we wanted to develop a personal relationship. So for example, if you look at the past 1 year that Imran Khan has come into power, he's developed close relationships with some of our key players. So we've got Saudi Arabia, Qatar.
But they're not all very. They're not held in very positive light. All of these, Putin, MBS, Trump. So I'm not sure that's a positive thing.
Sure. So every country has to protect their own interest.
Sure.
So Mr. Imran Khan, when he went there, he had to represent Pakistan's interest. So number one, he wanted to have that personal relationship. So Mr. Trump can now pick up the phone and says to Mr. Imran Khan, actually, this is what happened. You came and you said this, but something else has happened. So there's a direct relationship established, whereas before it wasn't. It was like a Cold War of words. We saw the Twitter exchange. So number one, in terms of optics, we developed a personal relationship. Number two,
why would you? That's quite disturbing. Why would you want a personal relationship with somebody who's been, I guess, at least made comments which are very Islamophobic? Why would you want a personal relationship with that? I get the point that Ali Mustafa has made, that this is kind of like a state level. He's the head of the United States. He's the president of the United States. So therefore, there is that need. There's a need for a relationship, but personal one. That's kind of. Is that disturbing?
A personal relationship in terms of protecting the interest of the country. So he's representing the interest of America. Let's not forget, in Afghanistan, USA has been there for 19 years. Obviously, they need an exit plan out. They didn't have one, and Imran Khan had been saying, let's get out of the war, and we would help you. The reason for that person, I guess, the thing is, Mr. Trump still has, obviously the president of America. So having that, I guess, personal connection is that he can bypass the administration like the different lobbies. This visit, coincidentally, wouldn't have come so early had it not been the personal relations that Mr. Khan developed in little under a year with MBS and other Arab countries, Turkey, Malaysia, UAE, Qatar. This wouldn't have happened because of our Arab friends, which you just said that, it doesn't look in a positive place. Every country has to protect our interests. So number one was this. A strong personal relationship, a direct communication. What I mean by personal relationship, a direct communication channel has now opened up between Imran Khan and Trump. It leads the senior leadership of Trump. Number two, in 3 days that he was there, he's actually literally changed the perception of Pakistan in America. So, for example, if you saw the Congress media briefing, if you saw the media briefing with Mr. Trump, if you also saw his Fox interview, and as well as his think tank in peace history. He's actually literally changed the perception. He's been honest. He's been upfront. Put up his hand. Yes, we made some mistakes. However, you also made some mistakes.
Right.
So number two, he's changed the perception. And lastly, there was a question that was asked to him: would you resume the aid? Now, there was a question asked by some journalists in the meeting, and Trump hinted towards that. Yes, we might do that. Blah blah blah. Don't forget, according to the Coalition Support Fund, they owe us $9 billion. So we do need that money. So
okay, all right. Let me put a question to Ali Mustafa. Ali, so a lot of the things that have been talked about, could they not have been achieved through a phone call or something like that? Private phone call, have a conversation. The world didn't need to know about it. And what does it matter whether you have a personal chemistry or not between the president, etc.?
It is important, but I think we need to be careful here. We need to look at the nature of the Pakistan-US relationship throughout history. Since the 1950s, this relationship, even to this day, is a transactional relationship.
Sure. Yeah.
What do we mean by that? Well, in the 1950s, 60s, Pakistan was a bulwark against the Soviet expansion.
Yeah.
That changed, that continued into Afghanistan with the Soviets moving in. Then 9/11 happened. Then Pakistan's army became an army for hire as part of the global war on terror, something for which they were paid in coalition support funds, 13 billion of which went unaccounted for. Then they tried to start a civilian route with the Kerry-Lugar-Berman legislation. So it's not something that is happening in a vacuum. It's not something, and perceptions, mind you, are quite fickle. You can have a personal relationship to forward your statecraft. But if at the end of the day, if you are not delivering on both sides, perceptions can change very, very quickly. And unless this relationship changes from a transactional to a multilateral relationship, you will be back at these crossroads over and over again. Because keep in mind, the Americans leave, what happens then? Does Pakistan continue to use its proxies or that proxy mentality despite what Prime Minister Khan is saying? And also keep in mind, accompanying Prime Minister Imran Khan was the chief of the Pakistan Army, General Bajwa. He had his own set of meetings. So it's not just Imran Khan meeting Donald Trump. This carries the weight of 70 years of a transactional relationship that is cyclical in a lot of ways.
So if it is, like you're saying, a transactional relationship, do you think that this visit, in a sense, was about playing to the ego of Imran Khan to make that transactional more in favor of the United States?
Not really.
So Ali, for you first, please.
Go on, please. No, yeah. Well, not necessarily. Keep in mind, the meeting at this point in time is to complete a transaction. So it's a continuation. What is the transaction? Well, the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan, the incorporation or integration of the Afghan Taliban as a political entity, so that violence subsides. And Pakistan says its interests are aligned with a peaceful Afghanistan because a peaceful Afghanistan means a peaceful Pakistan. In theory, in words, this sounds wonderful. But the reality, when it comes down, will a winning side? You have seen in the past 30 days more attacks in Kabul, in eastern Afghanistan than you have in the past 6 months. As you are nearing remarkable progress, according to Zalmay Khalilzad, the U.S. representative for Afghanistan. So you've got a lot of these moving parts. And just to base our conclusions on this perception or this successful perception of a visit, I think will be a fallacy.
Right. Okay. So Asad, you were saying you were going to make a point.
No, I mean, look, at the end of the day, each country, transactional relationship can also be looked at as protecting one's interest. So every country has their own interest. America has an interest. They want to safe exit. Pakistan has an interest. So, for example, what did we actually achieve from this visit? Or what did Mr. Khan's 3-day visit actually achieve? So, like I was saying, yes, there's a personal, I guess you can say, direct communication. We'll remove the person. Direct communication channels have been opened up with the top leadership of Trump. That wasn't the case. I mean, when Mr. Nawaz Sharif and all these previous government ones went, you can see the difference. So, for example, all these previous governments, Nawaz Sharif, his predecessors, they went there for exactly that transactional relationship. So Mr. Khan didn't talk about aid. In fact, he cursed it. If you listen to him, he said, no, I didn't come here for that. I came here for mutual respect. I came to put my point of view across on Afghanistan, having peace. If you listen to Mr. Trump, he said, if I wanted to, I would bomb in a week and I would kill 100 million people or whatever he said. I mean, it was just nonsense anyway, but he was...
But how could he take that? Because, he's a Pashtun, right? And you've got Afghan, a lot of Afghanis are Pashtuns as well. And to hear that from somebody to say, well, I could have just pressed a button and killed 10 million of them, how could he have just gone there and listened to that?
Well, you have to take in a context. He did complete his sentence, but he said, but I don't want to do that. And then he completed it. It
doesn't matter what the sentence is. He said what he said, right? And that's not a...
That's his reflection. That's a reflection of his character, his personality.
So to the point exactly, which is that, yes, at a state level, right, there needs to be a discussion. There needs to be kind of like communications between Pakistan and America. But does it need to have this discussion on a one-to-one level with somebody, right, who's unpredictable like that?
Well, at the end of the day, again, I come back to the point that Mr. Imran Khan, he represents Pakistan, and he went there with specific goals in mind. Number one, to clear the air, the misunderstandings. He educated the people of, especially the Trump administration. Let's not forget the Indian lobby, second behind Israeli lobby, extremely powerful in terms of resources, especially financial resources. The amount of effort they put in lobbying, that has to be counteracted, which is the reason why over the year you had negative statements coming out from Trump.
Right, I'm gonna take a short break now. Asad, yeah, sure. Ali, and Asad, are you happy to stay behind for another maybe 5 minutes or so? After the break, we'll just wrap up and finish after the break.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, thank you very much, listeners. Stay tuned. Inshallah, we'll be back after the break and we'll continue with this discussion. Assalamu alaikum.
You are listening to Spy FM.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. You're listening to Friday Night Live on Aspire FM 105.1 FM. We were discussing Imran Khan's visit to the United States. We have on the line Ali Mustafa, who is the presenter of Straight Talk on TRT World. We also have Asad Mahmood, who is from the office of the international chapter of the PTI, the Pakistani Tehreek-e-Insaf, Imran Khan's party. And in the studio is Basit Mahmood, who's a journalist for the Metro. We were talking about the fact that just before the break, we were talking about whether a personal relationship is necessary in order to get a transactional relationship forward. The responses that we've had so far, I guess, from Ali and Asad, is that it's part and parcel of, progressing a transactional relationship. But Basit has a slightly different view. Basit, you think you have to be absolutist in terms of having relationships with people who have a particular standing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, right, Trump, these guys have both of them admitted that he's a racist and to some extent a white supremacist. Both of them admitted that.
Yeah.
The more you do this transactional business, the more you end up legitimizing his views. Whether you like it or not, you say, no, I don't support those views, but the more you sit down with him, the more you entertain him, the more you interact with him, you end up legitimizing those kind of ideologies, right? Secondly, I think you said that, but I can't believe you said that basically the 10 million, he said he could kill 10 million or however many millions it was in Afghanistan, but he doesn't want to. You said there's context behind that. The truth is this, right? He was implying a threat of force, right? I don't want to, I want to, it's down in my hands. That's what he's basically saying. And for you to say that should be taken into context, I think that's a wrong take on it, because I think he's trying to imply the threat of violence, and he's threatening North Korea and all these countries, right? We know he's not fully kind of, even his own military don't think they in the White House, in that book that was written, Fire and Fury, they say we're not going to do that. Whatever he just said, whatever behind his back, they say we're not going to do that, because they realize the danger of what this man is. And for you to play it down by saying, oh, this context, I think that's very wrong. And thirdly, just lastly, you guys raised the point of there being, national interest, state interest, right? Well, I thought that statecraft ideology, realpolitik, was of the 1930s and 40s. But now we're going back into that, because the truth is there's universal values as well, and that was the whole point of the League of Nations, the human rights, the UN, the idea that, there are universal human rights too, right? And the more you are willing to upend those, and the more you're willing to do away with them just for the sake of statecraft, which we know now that sovereignty is no longer absolute. America's made that clear. The West has made that clear, with Gaddafi and Saddam, that basically you have to respect certain human rights. So I think it's funny. So the last point I just want to quickly make is that Britain, which has a far closer relationship, which you'd both surely accept, with America. For example, this speaker, John Bercow, is willing to say he can't come to the parliament. They're willing to stand up to him, and they've got a lot more to lose. And we're saying, no, but, we want to make a transactional business relationship. I think, I don't agree with that.
Okay, so Ali, do you want to respond to that first?
I'm not saying that.
So,
I can respond to that. So for sure, a few points.
Yeah.
Diplomacy and politics is often about what is not said as opposed to what is said. From a purely human rights activist perspective, your friend in the studio is absolutely right. Normal people with a conscience, wouldn't necessarily put themselves in these situations. But we're talking about statecraft. And before anything else, we need to define what we mean by a transactional relationship between Pakistan and the United States. In this context, the United States has always viewed its relationship with Pakistan from a security paradigm, from a security lens. What that means is, vis-a-vis the Russians or the Soviets, vis-a-vis Al-Qaeda after 9/11 or the Taliban, that transactional nature will not end and hasn't ended. In fact, it is entering a new phase of transaction with the U.S. withdrawal, or the possibility of a U.S. withdrawal with Pakistan as a guarantor for the Taliban. Having said that, a broad-based relationship like the United States has with the Indians, for example, even if a security paradigm doesn't work, they have other incentives, economic, social, so on and so forth. That is a multilateral relationship, something that Pakistan has not been able to have with the United States in its 70 years. And despite these perceived successes at the White House recently with the visit of Imran Khan, will not have until and unless Pakistan moves beyond a security-based paradigm.
And do you think he actually succeeded in convincing anybody in America in doing that, moving beyond the security paradigm?
He convinced the Americans to continue dealing with Pakistan purely on this security paradigm, because keep in mind that this transactional relationship had come to a complete halt in the tail end of the Obama years and the beginning of the Trump era, where there was so much negativity, there was no communication to move the transactional relationship forward. Forget about a multilateral relationship.
Sure. Okay.
So that has given an opening.
Okay, all right, it's given an opening. Okay, I said you're gonna sort of present your view.
I mean, what it is we have to go back to your original question, which was what was the impact of Prime Minister for Pakistan Imran Khan's visit to USA? Well, going back to that original question, the impact has been on many different levels. Certainly, the perception has been changed, like I keep saying. The interest, look, Imran Khan went there to protect the interests of Pakistan. What are they? They range from security, which your colleague was earlier mentioning, as well as economical. So he met with IMF head, World Bank head. He was protecting the interests of Pakistan in terms of trade. If you listen to his interviews, he over and over said, look, we want a relationship on equal footing, not on you do this, I do that. Nothing like that. So this is a new paradigm shift in Pakistan-USA relationship. All the previous relationships that Pakistan had with USA, it's transactional based. And do you know why that was? The reason was because of the inept and, I guess, incompetent leadership that Pakistan had. They couldn't think beyond their...
That's not true all of the case, because I remember if you read...
Oh, come on, it's the army, dude, come on.
Yeah, it's a...
actual relationship between the United States and Pakistan.
Okay, if it was the army...
Of a muscular armed forces determining that particular policy. That's why it doesn't move beyond security.
That's right.
What are you talking about?
Okay, but if it was the army, then how... So why did all these civilian made all this money out of it, and why did they, I guess...
But they knew they couldn't do anything about it, and they just profited from the whole situation, to be honest. This is the first time
Because the army also made money. The army made the most money, and there's a trickle-down effect in any patronage-based society, as Pakistan is, based on a feudal system.
My point exactly.
With the biggest land-owning entity being the Pakistan Armed Forces.
Right,
so my point exactly, which is you're actually saying the same thing I am, but in a different way, which was that the reason we had this transactional relationship, yes, it was the army, but it was also the incompetent and inept leadership. Now, we have a civilian leadership now as well, which has always been accused, or the army is behind it, or the military behind it. That's the accusation. But, it's gone beyond that. This leadership that we have currently in Pakistan is genuine, is for the people of Pakistan, and this guy, he didn't stay. I mean, you can analyze it over and over again and come up with different arguments, or he did this, he did that. The reality of the matter is that the Pak-USA relationship has now been reset. Direct communication channels have been established. India has been eliminated from the Afghan peace. Little over a year ago, India was playing the main role. Now it's been eliminated for the first time since not even Obama. I mean, we didn't even hear of Kashmir from the mouth of American presidents since I can't even remember now. And all of a sudden, he's sitting there and he said, "Oh, yeah, I'll help out with Kashmir." I mean, you can't.
Yeah, but you can't.
You can't just say, "Oh, do you know what? The good old argument: Pakistan is run by the military." Oh, I mean, come on, you can't say that over and over again, because look, the question of tonight's show was what impact did Imran Khan's visit made? Well, the impact has been massive on many levels. It's just that we haven't realized that. And that is I guess that's a sad thing, because at the end of the day, Imran Khan is protecting the interests of Pakistan, and he's done that very well on Afghan issue, on trade issue, as well as Kashmir issue. The three main things, and all these three things, the military is right behind that. So I think we have to look at it in a positive manner, in a positive sense, in terms of the current leadership we have. And I've talked about the previous incompetent leadership that we had, and how they interacted in a transactional manner. I agree with your speaker earlier. Yes, there was transaction, but now if you listen to Imran Khan, he said, no more transactions, equal footing, we'll help you with that. And then in terms of trade, let's do more trade. So they know.
So we need to try and wrap up this discussion. We're running a little bit late. I'm sorry about that. So Ali, just finally a few words. Some say, just picking up on what I said, saying about the security paradigm, like you suggested, within Afghanistan. Some commentators say that Pakistan is actually now in a stronger position, in a sense that Pakistan has been asked to actually provide an exit strategy, effectively, or for America.
You heard President Trump, right? I mean, he was saying Pakistan is going to have.
Ali, can I just ask Ali to comment on that?
Yeah.
So Ali, did Pakistan go from a position of strength basically this time?
Listen, the biggest security challenge, threat facing Pakistan is a water scarcity, which will leave 1/3 of its population without access to clean drinking water.
No, that's a slightly different issue. That's a slightly different issue. But I'm saying from the...
This is all connected. This is all connected.
Okay.
Well, then you can talk about the economy as well.
If Pakistan,
if
Pakistan doesn't take those measures, if we get lost in these debates of what these visits will get us, in the short term, try to kickstart that, we will lose vision. We have already lost sight of the greater challenge, which will create a lot more chaos than a failed or successful summit meeting between Imran Khan and Donald Trump.
Okay, all right. Okay, we'll end it there. Basit, do you have some final few words?
Yeah, I just think, if you think that just because of this one meeting the entire paradigm has shifted, is a joke. And secondly, I think the history will judge those who try to normalize a racist white supremacist president, who we don't know how it's going to end, how the Trump presidency will end. It's not looking very good. And I think you might be made to eat your words then.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you, Ali. As usual, you've been very insightful, very entertaining. Alhamdulillah, really welcome your comments on Inspire FM all the time. I said thank you very much for taking the time out and speaking to us.
Pleasure.
And Basit, thank you for staying behind today and helping with the discussion. Jazakallah, everyone. Thank you. Right, we're going to move on to a slightly different topic, and we're going to talk about we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the heat wave. What heat wave? What are you chatting about? There's no heat wave. Right, okay, there was a bit of a heat wave last couple of days, yesterday in particular, and I guess a lot of people found it uncomfortable. Shouldn't be the case, because I think we hail from a country where these temperatures are quite normal, but that was the case. It was quite hot, and so we have Dr. Tahir Mahmood. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Tahir Mahmood. Welcome to the
Thank you. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
Wa alaikum assalam. Well, we're going to talk about the fact that, from a health perspective, what is the best way, I guess, to sort of stay safe, because the heat has, in France at least anyway, in some parts of UK, it is a health risk, a hazard, and there was a yellow health warning, I think, that was given, a weather warning, I guess, that was given in terms of impact of the heat on people, and there have been deaths as well. So I guess from a doctor's perspective, what's your advice on staying safe in this weather?
The heat has shaken the whole country yesterday, and
especially the train services.
Sorry,
I said especially the train services, which came to a halt yesterday.
Airport, train services, and also all sort of businesses were almost a hold.
Yeah.
Yesterday, people were hiding in the cool place, and some areas it was up to 37. But particularly where I was in yesterday, it was 41 degrees centigrade. We noted it.
Oh well,
so
that is hot.
Totally unexpected, and I think the whole country felt the warmth and the strength of the climate change.
Yeah.
As a health perspective, obviously it has a great impact on everyone's health, especially people at the extreme of age, for example, little children and vulnerable adults and people with chronic problems such as diabetes, heart problems. And they were quite vulnerable, and these people are the most affected, especially, and also I would include pregnant women.
So what's the risks then of hot weather? Obviously, I guess dehydration is an obvious one. I think everyone knows about.
Yeah, it's a heat exhaustion,
right?
Which can be, if you experience this much of heat for 30 minutes, people are not used to it. Like in Pakistan, India, or Sri Lanka, or Bangladesh, when we go, when we go up there, we used to face that much temperature almost 6 months of the year. But now the people, they're not acclimatized, or they're not accustomed to these heat waves. So in this country, if you stay with that sort of heat about an hour or so, you start feeling heat exhaustion, which can be serious, like give you headache, dizziness. It can cause confusion, loss of appetite. Many people, they had body aches and also had a temperature. They were feeling thirsty and very uncomfortable lifestyle. So this was the part. They are the main signs of heat exhaustion, and which were basically felt by almost everyone yesterday. Yeah.
Okay, so it's basically main symptoms you're saying of heat exhaustion is the main threat. Main symptoms are headache, feeling weak. What was the other symptoms you were saying?
Confusion.
Confusion. Okay.
Dizziness, appetite. You feel sick.
And what's
you feel better. Yeah.
So what's to be done about that, and what can you do?
I think the best important thing is to make sure that we are we're not in a warm place, for example, a cool place.
Yeah.
And many people were under the roof, and we should open the windows, mainly windows which are not toward the sun side, and also try to drink as much as fluids, cold fluids as much as possible, and cool the skin, like doing a spray or sponge, or take a cold bath, all these kind of things, and give also make sure the neighbors and the people who are not able to look after themselves, we need to look after themselves as well. That was the main important felt yesterday. Many people are living in a neighborhood where there were people vulnerable who couldn't help themselves. They suffered most. So this is a part of the management of heat exhaustion. Yeah.
Right, and I guess there's other complications as well, isn't it? So you've got, I guess people have to walk, right, in the sun. They probably have to sort of walk shorter distances and take refuge, I guess, under the shade, etc., with the risk of getting sunburns, I guess.
Yeah. Definitely. People who are working outside, like building sites or construction sites, they are risk of having the sun on top of their head all the time, and also dehydration and sunburn, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, all these kind of things. I hope this kind of heat wave will not come back now. Because it was much better than yesterday.
You've had enough already, have you?
Oh, yesterday was you wouldn't believe it. I took about 3 cold baths last night.
Well.
I was 6 showers.
Yeah. It was quite bad, wasn't it? And I guess it interrupts the sleep as well, because I think people are not used to sort of sleeping in such uncomfortable sort of temperatures, and I guess sleep deprivation has an impact on I guess many factors, isn't it, in terms of work and concentration and health.
Yeah, sleep deprivation. If you go work tomorrow morning,
yeah.
I was encountering pregnant women today, and I know how they battle with this heat exhaustion and plus household work and all these kind of things, lack of sleep, lack of rest, and all these kind of things. It was incredibly difficult for them.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I guess you mentioned a few sort of people, vulnerable people, elderly, I guess, and the young and the pregnant. But you also mentioned people who are diabetic risk at. Now how would that? I mean, that's not immediately obvious. Why would the diabetic people be affected more by the heat?
All the people, for example, diabetes, heart problems, they're vulnerable. The body temperature, the body immune system is different from the people who haven't got these problems. So they're all at risk of sudden change in body thermostat and imbalance in the blood pressure, diabetes control, all these kind of things. That's why the people with chronic diseases, and if they experience, they are under a lot of heat that time, that's why they become vulnerable and at the risk of getting more exhaustion and deterioration here.
And I think there have been reports, at least there were reports the previous time there was a heat wave in France, that up to sort of a large number of people actually died, elderly people died. How?
That's right.
I mean, to be honest, I mean that kind of surprises me a little bit, right? Because I can get people get thirsty and I get people get exhausted and get headaches and stuff like that. But dying of I mean, tell me what sort of processes go through, right, where people actually end up dying because of the heat. I don't know. I mean,
you see, for example, if the body is not used to in France or in a large part of Europe, the temperature is very different. What is in Southeast Asia? Yeah, and the people are not used to it, and it can cause confusion. It can cause brain damage. It can change the.
Is that because of the breathing, respiration? Is it, or is it because of just the temperature?
So, for example, when the brain is affected, so the whole body is affected, the regulatory mechanism, the heart, and also kidneys, as well as your respiratory system, like breathing problems, they're all part of it. This regulation, it totally become irregular and out of control, especially in people who have got underlying conditions such as heart problems, kidney problems, where their regulatory mechanism are already not the best one. So these people, especially elderly people who are confused, have got any brain problem or any kind of chronic illnesses, that's why those people, most of those people died with the complications of the heat stroke.
So it's just basically an added factor, really, rather than the direct cause, you would say.
Well, you can see that the heat stroke is quite fatal than we experience in this country. It's quite fatal heat stroke,
Right. So okay. So I guess these are some of the signs to look out for on a hot sort of day like it was yesterday. But in terms of the response from the NHS, I mean, what sort of incidents are you aware of? Was there a lot of people actually being hospitalized yesterday, or was there a big ramp up of calls, and was there kind of like a campaign of awareness from the NHS?
I don't think there was any campaign on the NHS about this, but obviously NHS has been regularly advising people on looking after themselves, like creating self-care awareness among them. And yesterday the event was expected, and there was a alert, and you can see the media and the newspapers and all sorts of people are aware of this, and most of the people, they are aware of the heat rash, the heat wave, and fact, but many people were prepared for this, and I can see the most chaotic scenes were noted in the business places, the Ondal Centre or area, or the airport and the railway stations.
Because there was I think on the trains it's quite bad actually, because there's a lot of trains that were cancelled because apparently the rail tracks were at risk of buckling under the temperature. Never heard that one before, but
yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think myself and others as well have had to take very long journeys to be able to get home yesterday, because a lot of the trains, the regular running trains, were cancelled, and there was a lot of
cancelled yesterday. Yes.
That's right.
Yeah,
but in the hospitals themselves, did you see have you noticed or have you heard about large influx of people who were brought in because of heat-related issues yesterday or this week?
I haven't, to be honest, I haven't got the data what happened yesterday, but obviously emergency department encountered a lot of heat-related minor problems,
sure,
as well as the other parts of the primary care and secondary care, and but still the executive has to come up here.
So I guess one final thing, Dr. Tahir Mahmood, you've been very helpful today. It's been very informative. But one thing is that there's a lot of people who, when the sun comes out, I mean, they want to go sunbathing and make use of the vitamin D, etc., and get tan. And there are actually health risks. People say, there's a risk of skin cancer, etc. But there isn't kind of like a scaling to say, well, if you stay this long, your risk increases by this factor, whatever. I mean, what sort of advice is there about sort of staying in the sun, and how long is it safe before you start worrying about cancer and stuff like that?
As far as I understood that you asked me the risk factor, the longer you stay under the sun, more is the risk of having...
So what's long then? Is it 1 hour, 50 minutes, half an hour? What's long?
No. There are some areas
yeah,
for a prolonged use of the sun and the naked skin can pose the risk of skin cancers.
Right.
And especially people who are predisposed to it. For example, many Caucasians, white-skinned people, they are at risk of having skin cancer, and especially when they're exposed on the long-term basis, and when there's for a few hours a day for the 4, 5, or 6 months. Okay, but what is underestimated is the effect of the sunbathing on the people with the brown skin, and also the effect of constant skin bathing on the, for example, children and the other things which are not skin cancers or any infection. There's a lot of other rashes which people they get worried about. They suffer with warm.
I'm going to, Dr. Saab, I've run out of time now, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair for your contribution today. It's been really informative.
No problem. Thank you.
We'll speak again, inshallah, some other time. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, listeners, it's that time of the day, inshallah. Come to an end of the show this week. Inshallah, next week we'll have another set of decent topics to talk about. Until then, assalamu alaikum. Speak to you next week.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.